You are here. It's a bit daunting, I know. This looks like a map of the subway in London. Recall that, Don? You can get lost, but what you also see here is that everything is interconnected. And it's pretty fascinating to think that you have everything from the basics, Google, MSN, in terms of picking up information and going for search, all the way over to the far left. They talk about people, Guy Kawasaki, who is a commentator. He is out there just saying what he thinks and believes and has a huge following, all the way over to Friendster, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Really what this is saying is there's so much interconnectivity, and as you saw in the video, people are using it. But if you don't have a sense of it, it can be pretty daunting. But don't be overwhelmed. That's what my agency tells me. Don't be overwhelmed. There is a way through it. It's a good thing. Remember those 31 hours I referenced earlier? Well, the good news is that people are spending more time with media than ever before. Never in the history of marketing have we had so many people engaging with content. And we have so many opportunities to give our content to people in a way that's meaningful and relevant. It means that we can form a totally different relationship with our audience. That's a good thing. We can create our own voice, where we are, how we're being consumed. We can shape our destiny. The next point is sort of a good and a bad, because while we're doing that shaping, the fact of the matter is we don't really control it. If we don't put our brands on the web, our brands will show up there. Now, this is a weird question, but I don't know how many of you have actually Googled yourself. I know that sounds really vain. My son came up to me the other day and said, "Hey, Mom, I Googled you. Look at all this stuff." And I went, "Where did this come from?" And it is amazing when you're speaking at TAG, when you're in the Wall Street Journal, no matter where you are, it shows up on the web. So if you take that from the personal to what we work in every day, our brands are going to be out there. So you have to recognize that and deal with it. You can't run away. So what does it mean for us as marketers? Well, once upon a time when I started, so long ago, once upon a web, it was I published content, consumers came, looked for it, and pulled it. Pretty simple. Well, the new paradigm is actually much more complex. Push, of course we have to provide content, but it has to be really, really entertaining and educational. People are looking for that. So there is a pull. They're going to go through the search and the discovery of this. And they use the web to discover new things. So being out there is relevant, but we have to recognize that entertaining, education, making it simple is critical. We have to contribute to the things they care about. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that more later. But the fact of the matter is consumers of the web don't see themselves as consumers of a brand. They see them as participants. They see themselves as part of a larger tribe. So you have to offer things that are relevant to them, or else they will not follow you. And speaking of following, we as marketers also have to follow. We have to listen. We have to respond to what our consumers are saying to us. So a little more complicated, not out of the realm of possibility, but you just have to broaden your frame of reference. So what's some guidance for operating in this new world order? The first and foremost is, and I'm probably telling you stuff you guys know better than me, which is experiment smartly and fail fast. You can do stuff on the web pretty quickly, but if it isn't working, you get it off and you try something new. Think twice before starting your own community. And this is something that we learned at Coke. Every small brand wanted their own homepage, thinking that there were droves of consumers that were going to come to us. Not so much. The fact is, there are huge communities out there, Facebook, MySpace, Twitter. These are the places where people are talking about our brand, so we need to be leveraging those spaces as opposed to trying to create new spaces. Listen to everything. Talked about that before. People are out there, they're commenting. It's a dialogue now, so you need to listen to it and respond to it. You can't ignore what's going on. Leverage all touch points. You saw the map. That means that you don't have to do everything on there, but it certainly is an opportunity for you to broaden your connection points with the audience. This is my personal favorite. If you want to be social, be social. Think about a friendship. If you're having a conversation and it's one way, that's not a conversation. That is a speech, like I'm doing now. As opposed to a social network, which is two-way dialogue, interaction. If you want to be in the social world, if you want to be in social media, you have to commit to doing that kind of interaction with the consumers. Provide tools that were useful. I don't know, I can't recall in the video, but I know one of the versions I saw, Alex went to a site, found it inappropriate, and just immediately exit it. If it isn't easy, they're not going to do it. So you have to be useful, and it has to be simple. Reward for involvement. I'm going to give you a case study later that talks about how given time is precious, and when people interact, you need to give them some form of a reward. It doesn't have to be monetary, but it has to be something that they can use. Be direct, be simple, they don't have a lot of time, and most importantly, beware of the grand gesture. And what that means is, again, I'm going to use an analogy. If a friend or a spouse gives you a big bouquet of flowers on your birthday, and then you never hear from them again for a year, that's not a relationship. That's not something that's building the kind of trust and interaction. Same thing holds with the internet. If you do a big splashy launch and then nobody hears from you again, you put up the homepage and it's never being touched, never being updated, people aren't listening to the postings, you're not interested. It's not a relationship. So beware of the grand gesture. So just a few words about the social sphere. Definitions, I like definitions. Social media, blogs, two-way media, Facebook, content that connects audiences, brands, and meaningful conversations, and live streaming. Live streaming is this whole phenomenon around Twitter, which I find amazing. Here you have people who have a point of view, and they're out there. But what's fascinating is that they have followers, and they interact with their followers. And that's what Twitter does. It gives you an opportunity to, in a very targeted way, blast information to people who care, as opposed to publishing and letting them find you. So the whole the concept with the social networking is that people will self-select, they become tribes, they become participants, they join into a cause, and then you can form a very strong bond associated with them, which means that you have the perfect audience. And as marketers, what's better than that? So what does it mean? When you boil it down, there's kind of, right now, a number of different entities in social networking. Video sharing, that's probably the biggest. About 74% of the social network is in that space, YouTube. Blogs, 60% read, 26% write. One of the things that was fascinating when we looked at who actually is on the internet, the vast majority, and I do mean about 75% of people, are what we would call spectators and joiners. They're not actually interacting yet. It's growing. People are getting more used to it. And as they find their way on the web and they find the place they feel comfortable, then they start to interact. But for the most part right now, people are still sitting back and trying to find their way. Photo sharing is about 47% of the social networking. Social networks, about 43%. Podcasts, 30%. RSS feeds, which is where you actually specify what you want to have brought to your home site, much smaller, 19%. Dating, 5%. How about that? And then widgets, which I don't even want to talk about, is there. So you can see there's a lot of things that are encompassed in social networking or social media, and I think the biggest one we're all familiar with is, of course, YouTube.